Welcome to the EchoCast, episode 87. The EchoCast is a Division 2 podcast talking about news, updates, speculation, state of the community, state of the game, my own rants and ravings, and whatever else I feel like talking about. So, what we'll talk about today, Division 2 news recap. We'll talk about Stadia and xCloud. Cassie Mendoza and the Hunters in Division 2. And then some content updates, and we'll roll from there. If you'd like to support the podcast and my other content, please check out patreon.com/theechocast. Thank you to our Patreon supporters this month: Hassan, Darren, Tim, Mike, Joe, DJ, Christian, Iceman, and Justin. Okay, so I have actually changed up the format of this just a bit. Since it appears that we're not going to have consistent state of the games anytime soon. So where this would normally be the state of the game recap, this will be the Division 2 news recap. So even when we have state of the games, I'm going to do it here. So this week, in lieu of a state of the game, we got a This Week in Division 2 forum post, as well as a couple other small things. So basically they reaffirmed that they'll be doing different types of messaging and not just state of the games. A statement that makes it seem like state of the game will not return until January of 2020. So I'm going to kind of comment on these things as they come up. So I understand the point of not having state of the games without significant news, but I think they're sending the wrong message here. And I think they're making it look like they're just not dedicated to the game and to hearing out the community. I know that's immediately disproven by the other things they're doing, the other updates, their interactions on Twitter and the forums and Reddit. I'm not saying that they don't care about the game, that they aren't dedicated to the game. I'm just saying that this makes it look like they aren't. So I understand not having state of the games very often, but going over a month without them, less than a year after the game came out, I think it's a pretty bad look. And on top of that, if we don't get any episode 3 info or teasers or anything until January, even with my very positive outlook on everything, including this game, I'm going to be insanely disappointed. And I just don't get it. I don't understand. Episode 3 of Division 2 has to be huge. And not even huge content wise, but just it has to be a big deal. And if it's not a big deal, then it's not gonna matter. Then the game really might be dead. I have a feeling year 2 is actually going to be a big deal. But the problem is that I really think episode 3 needs to be really good to make people even care about year 2. And I really hate the way that this is going. I want to believe that they're handcuffed and that there's only so much they can do. I've said before that I'm glad that Ubisoft isn't the type of company to make its people work 80 hours a week and to make them hate their lives and their jobs and all that. But there also has to be results or a plan or something. The episode 1 and 2 had kind of like a mysterious aura about them before they came out. And with episode 1, I think people are like, oh man, this is going to be something really big. And we really didn't know what Kinley College was. And then it came out and it was like an empty whoopee cushion, It wasn't even a fart. And it was kind of like, oh, that's why they didn't hype it up, because it wasn't that cool. And then episode 2 came out and it was, there was kind of a cool little trailer, little teaser. And then it was 2 cool missions. Aside from how great I think Title Update 6 is. It kind of came out with another fluff. So where I'm at personally is that if episode 3 isn't huge, then I don't know what's going to happen community wise. And if episode 3 is huge, they can't wait until January to start talking about it. I think that's such an awful move. I know a lot of these guys are going to be off for a few weeks around Christmas. That's fine. I'm not saying we need an hour in-depth video talking about episode 3. We just need something. Everyone thinks that episode 3 is going to be 2 new missions and 2 new classified missions and a new specialization. And while I'm inclined to tell people like, nah, I think it's actually going to be a big deal because I think that episode 3 is going to be a lot different than episode 1 and 2, I have no way to prove that. It's purely off of my hopes and dreams. and I get that. And that's why I've kind of pulled off from that, because I'm going to be straight up. I'm a little worried it's going to be 2 missions and some classified missions and a new specialization. And while I have hope that that's false and that that's wrong, and that Massive is going to look at what the first 2 studios did with episode 1 and 2 and say, oh, damn, that was not good enough. And they're going to throw this big sweet thing in front of us. At this point, I have no reason to believe that this isn't just going to be 2 new missions and a specialization. And so, I don't know. The news recap also talked about that there was a patch on the 19th to rotate items in the cache pool. I don't get it. Just put them all in there and have them drop at a better rate. I don't get this rotating them out. They already don't really drop that fast. And so I guess that you're making the pool smaller so people can get items they couldn't get before. But maybe we just make it easier to get all of the items. I don't know. I feel like this might be a negative podcast. I promise I'll try and make sure it isn't. But I just don't get this. Just make it easier to get all the stuff. I mean, if I want to buy it, I'll buy it. But I don't think any of the cosmetics are worth buying. So maybe that's why they're doing this. I have no idea. And Kinley College is shutting down on December 3rd. Again, this is another thing. I don't get it. They treat Kinley College like it's this like really exciting thing to get a chance to play, in this like artificial rarity of getting to play it. And it's just like the most underwhelming content in the game. And I don't think anyone's like clamoring to get to play it again. Just leave it open. Let us just play it. I don't understand. It's just like, it's like making people wait to go on a merry-go-round that doesn't spin. Like, I don't get it. But I don't know. I'll just add that to the rant list. They did acknowledge a bunch of high priority issues that they're working on. NPCs not spawning or unable to locate the NPCs to progress in missions. Invisible walls in several areas. Specializations resetting under certain circumstances. Developer interface showing up when people are trying to fast travel to missions. On that note, I actually saw some screenshots on Reddit that I thought were interesting. This glitched out on someone, and they found some indication that the Pentagon missions will become invaded, which is super cool. I would love to see a slightly alternative timeline or story to those missions. Side note, I finally did Camp White Oak Invaded, and that was actually really cool. I still need to do the zoo, actually. But people also found, when this developer interface popped up when fast traveling and it messed up, they found the Coney Island Part 1 and Part 2 labels, which, if you've listened to the podcast before, you'll know that I have been hoping but not expecting the New York City DLC to actually be like a big story mode. We'll see if maybe that leads to some maybe that's what it is. We'll have to see. And then the final priority issue they're looking at is players being able to enter the dark zone with large quantities of specialization ammunition. So get your grenade launchers out, people. You mess some people up. So my thoughts just kind of on the news this week and on this article, and specifically, again, I get what they're trying to do with the change in the messaging, to maybe be a little more available, and not just depend on what's a fairly complicated thing to do in the state of the game. It just feels gross. It doesn't feel good. I suspect that we'll actually end up getting more info as time goes on with this new system, but it just kind of feels like it's just egging on those people with the dead game callouts. And it's just like one issue I've had with this game, in the first game and now the second game, is that I feel like they're solid games. I think that Division 2 is a good game, but I think that the way that things are handled just gives the negative people so many opportunities to be negative and to shit on the game and to shit on the people who like the game. And even though I don't, I get that in theory you should just not pay attention to those people, but like it or not, they do. My audience has dwindled in most ways, I've noticed. In part, that might be because the game is slowed down, and a lot of those people who normally pay attention don't. In part, due to a situation where I believe I was basically lied about, and some people took some people seriously that they shouldn't have. And in part because there's just nothing to talk about. I'm struggling to do this podcast every week, and it just feels gross. Like when they talked about changing the format of all this, I think everyone was like, yeah, cool, that's fine. But when they mentioned that, they should have been like, oh, and by the way, we're not going to have a state of the game for 2 months. Like, I think everyone was cool with not having one every week. But I don't think anyone was like, yeah, guys, let's just not do it for 2 months. We'll just hope for a forum post. It just doesn't feel good. And I'm sure they get it. But that just doesn't, I don't know. It's tough. It just doesn't feel good. And that's the best way I can characterize it, I think. I really believe that Division 2 has a great future. I honestly think that it's in a better state now than most people will admit. Not most, I'm sure most people agree, but the loud people who disagree. And I have a reason to believe that episode 3 and even year 2 is going to be incredible. But for the next couple months, doesn't appear there's going to be anything to get people to think that. I'm mostly off blind faith and some winks and winky winks. But that doesn't matter to anyone else. It kind of turns into like a shit or get off the pot situation where I genuinely believe there's a bunch of cool stuff coming. But until we have any reason to actually believe that, who the hell cares what I think or what I believe? I don't blame people for not believing it. I don't blame people at all for thinking that episode 3 is just going to be 2 more missions and a specialization. And we need something to disagree with that. I don't care if it's a 10-second teaser. Give us some reason to believe that episode 3 won't be 2 missions and a specialization. Okay, and some other gaming news. We had the Stadia release. So I haven't played it, so I'll be straight up, but I watched a ton of coverage on it. So it seems like it's got 3 main issues. The games, the controller, or the interface of using it, and performance. So the games is kind of a hot mess. It has one original game that's exclusive to Stadia, which looks neat. I think it's called Guilt. Definitely doesn't look good enough to buy Stadia for. And then there's a bunch of games that aren't even on it that they like announced way back. Division 2 being one of them. It's not on there. Then I found out, and I remember during the XO19 conference, they actually talked about how xCloud, which we'll talk about in a moment, actually just uses Xboxes, basically, essentially, to stream the games to you, which means that the games natively work. What I didn't know about Stadia is that Stadia is Linux-based for some reason, and a lot of games don't work on Linux. So the companies who make the games, like Division 2 with Ubisoft, have to be made to be compatible and work with Linux, which drives me crazy, because that means that there's Division 2 devs, I assume. Now there may be like a Stadia team who does this, but I bet there isn't. But I assume that means that there's Division 2 devs right now working on making this game work on Stadia instead of working on Division 2. And that drives me absolutely bonkers, because it just seems so silly. I just don't get it. So yeah, it seems like the games, like I think like 3 of the headline games were the Tomb Raider games that came out a few years ago. It's weird. It just doesn't seem like the games are there. I saw some reviews about the controller, and the best description I saw of the controller is that it feels like the controller you would make your little brother use. So you would get the Nintendo controller, but then your little brother would get to play with the GameStop $5 controller that you bought used and has like gum on the inside somehow. So that's not good. And then just the interface in general. I saw that there's reports that the Chromecast that you have to use with it is overheating when it's being used and shutting down and not working. Or you have to use a Pixel phone, which not everyone has. I do have one. But I mean, I'm not going to pay for Stadia. This seems like a hot mess. And then just the performance in general. It looked like the first day it was awful. I saw a video about Destiny 2 where the guy was hitting the space bar and it was literally taking like a whole second for it to pop up on screen. Now, admittedly, that same person posted a video the next day where it looked like it was performing a lot better, but still not perfect. I myself have experience with this. I actually play, now that the baby is here, I actually play my Xbox downstairs on my laptop through the Xbox app, where if you have an Xbox on the same network as your laptop or desktop, you can use the Xbox app to stream and you can play off of that. And it's actually really cool. It works really well with even games like Division that are not super twitchy shooters. But I've tried playing like Apex and Call of Duty on it, and it's only a little bit of lag, but when you're playing against people who don't have it, it's rough. So Stadia thing, I'm not a big fan of it. I don't trust Google to stick with a project like this long term. The fact that there's no crossplay and all that kind of stuff, or cross save especially, I just don't get it. I don't get what the point is here. They're asking you to pay for games that you may not have access to forever, that you're paying new. Like if when Division 2 comes out on it, when you buy it, you're not going to have your PC Division 2 account or your Xbox or your PlayStation. It's going to be a brand new one that you're going to start from scratch. Like when I'm home, I want to play on hardware. This idea is really cool for if I'm not home, but the fact that you don't get that's why, so I got invited to xCloud, and why I think a system like xCloud or something similar for PlayStation is so much better is that when I'm home, I can play on the system. But then when I'm away, if I'm at a hotel or if I've got a lunch, hour lunch to kill some time, I can pull out a controller on my phone and play on xCloud and play my actual save eventually. Right now, they're just giving people a bunch of games to play. But the next step is that they're going to enable the ability that you can, like, I can play my Division 2 save at a Wendy's on my phone and a controller. Like, I'm probably never going to do that, but I can. And that's where the game streaming is so exciting, in my opinion, is it's how you get to access it outside of your home. Because when you're at your home, of course you want it on your actual PC or your console or whatever. So I think the Stadia thing's kind of weird. I think xCloud, and I know Sony has their own version, but I don't think they really focus on it too big right now. But I really think those have so much better of a chance, especially xCloud, because what's going to happen with xCloud is that Xbox is working really hard to put all their games on PC and Xbox, and you can decide which one you play it on, and it cross saves. And then you have xCloud that cross saves as well. So whether you're playing on your PC, on your Xbox, or on xCloud, you have the same save everywhere. And that just seems so much more attractive. And I trust Xbox to stick with xCloud way more than I trust Stadia to be stuck by with Google. If you want me to be totally honest, I'm sure they're both basically being used, at least in some capacity, to collect information. But I have no doubt in my mind that Stadia is just another data collection tool. And I'm sure there's people working on it who really believe in it, but I have a good feeling that the whole purpose of it has other implications. So not to get all crazy on it, but I don't know. And speaking of Xboxes, this is a discussion that actually started a few weeks ago, and it kind of made me kind of turn my head a little bit. So just the talk of moving to the next console generation. We haven't had to do this in 6-7 years now. And I think a lot of people, like, I kind of threw out the idea of like I can't wait to play Division 2 natively on the Xbox Scarlet, with its like really nice numbers. And I got a lot of kickback where people were like, they're not going to make a Division 2 for Scarlet or for the next gen. And I think this probably comes from a lot of PC players and stuff like that because, and I could be wrong here, but at least with Xbox, I don't really think Scarlet is going to be like the transition from Xbox to 360, where it just doesn't, like it's a new system. I don't think that's going to be the case with the next gen of consoles. I'm under the impression that it's going to be more like the progression from Xbox One to Xbox One X. That it's still going to play the same games. It's going to play like the same games natively. But when those games have a patch to unlock a higher fidelity graphics and effects and stuff like that, then they'll utilize them. So like, I suspect when Xbox Scarlet comes out, there's going to be a patch for Apex and, Gears 5 and Division 2 and all these games that when you load those games up on your Scarlet, whatever they end up calling it, you'll now have, hey, here we go. Look at these actual 4K graphics at 120 FPS. And you can still play with your friends on that have Xbox One. That's honestly where I think it's going. Now, I could be wrong, but I don't know. It was interesting, the feedback I felt. So there were people who really kind of seemed like they thought it was really stupid for thinking that it was going to be like that, you'll have to use backwards compatibility to play Division 2. And I'm willing to bet that's not going to be the case, but I could absolutely be wrong. I'm curious to what you think, so feel free to let me know. What you can also let me know is if you're going to stick through this 30-second mid-roll. Okay, so some Division 2 community topics. So what I'm going to do here is basically just scour Reddit and Twitter and YouTube a little bit for some topics to talk about and give my thoughts on. The first one I saw was talking about Cassie Mendoza and why there's like the 24 on, 32 off system for it. And I have no idea. I love Trick Dempsey. They're great. Love the enthusiasm. I've never seen anyone in this game have that much enthusiasm about what they're doing. I just don't, because it is frustrating. Now, I figured out a way to make the snitch always show up, but then that doesn't help if she's down. I just don't, in the way it works out, like I know it's 24 hours, it's a long time, but the problem is that if it's 24 hours and it starts at like 4 p.m. and I have a busy afternoon, that means I will not get it because I won't play that night and I won't play all next day, and then I get back from work around 4 or 5. So it's not going to happen. So the Cassie Mendoza thing, I don't know. I don't really know how to fix it. I'm too dumb. But I am curious to anyone listening how you would like to see Cassie Mendoza work. I think that most of us would agree that the way it works now, though, it just doesn't feel good. The next topic is, I see this kind of pop up, but like, how should hunters be implemented in Division 2? So right now we just have the secret little puzzles you complete, and then they pop out and you kill them. And then with that character, you no longer get to fight hunters. Obviously there's the one exception of the little side mission that you do, which still to me was like one of my favorite moments in this game. That was so cool because I didn't see anything about it before it happened. So I saw this mission pop up. It was a side mission just like all the rest. So I popped in there. I saw the dude hanging. I was like, that seems to be familiar. And then, then it happened, which was super cool. So, so how do I think they're going to implement them? So how I hope they don't implement them was in Division 1, they implemented them in some great ways. Obviously, their introduction through survival was great. Playing survival and trying to get through and extract with the worst gear I could, like all greens and blues, maybe some purples, and fighting those hunters at the end where we were pretty evenly matched was still some of my favorite moments in gaming, as well as the underground, going in the underground with a kind of balanced tactician build and fighting 2 hunters at once in the underground. So fun. Still some of my favorite times. I mean, I up to when Division 2 came out, the main thing I enjoyed doing was just doing kind of pointless underground runs, hoping to run into some hunters. So that was good. In Division 1, though, what they then did towards the end of the game, or the end of the active part of the game, was they put the hunters into the legendary missions. If you didn't play Division 1, there was a faction in Division 1 called the LMB, the Last Man Battalion. They were like a mercenary group that was there to protect Wall Street. And then when everything went down, they basically tried to take over the island for themselves because they didn't see the point of completing their mission anymore. Their leader was Colonel Bliss, pretty charismatic character. I enjoyed that part of the story. And the legendary missions in Division 1 were kind of like the heroics, but they had the LMB troops, but they had basically hunter AI, and they were fun. In the first few legendaries they put out, they were different missions in a way. It was kind of the same idea as the invaded missions, where the LMB had retaken this area and you had to go take it back from them. But then the last few invaded missions they put out, for some reason, decided to throw in hunters that were working with the LMB. But then I remember seeing some tweets from some people at the game who were like, well, it's not part of the story. This is just a gameplay element. The LMB aren't part of them. And what was so bad about it is it took away everything that was so cool about the hunters, because in survival in the underground, the hunters weren't invincible. You could kill them relatively quickly if they made a mistake or if you outplayed them. What was so cool about them was their skills, their mobility, and their aggressiveness. And then in these legendary missions in Division 1, with the hunters, all they did was just give them a hilarious, like millions and millions and millions of hit points. They were bullet sponges to the nth degree, and it was really pathetic. It really felt gross, where it made more sense if at the end of these legendary missions you would have fought these like super decked out rogue agents, because a part of the story with the LMB is that a bunch of the rogue agents went to go to work with them. You fight rogue agents in that game that are part of the LMB, so it would have made way more sense to do that. So that's what I hope they don't do with hunters in Division 2. What I hope they do is new modes. Kind of the way they were introduced in survival. I have a feeling that whatever Division 2 Episode 3 is, there's going to be some element of hunters to it. That's why I keep saying, even though I've been poo-pooed on it, that I think they need to have just like a little hunter teaser before Christmas. It can be simple, but it's all I want. It would get me talking. People brought up concerns that it would set wrong expectations and all that crap. At this point, who has expectations? Like, let's be honest. The people who would be pissed off about them showing a hunter and then being disappointed about whatever it ends up being are already pissed off. Who gives a shit? At this point, their best play is to try to improve the game for everyone and to give a ton of fan service. That's just my opinion, but that's how I see it, is that the people who are all poo-poo about everything are going to be poo-poo no matter what. So honestly, do what you can to make the game better. Maybe you pull them in, but it has to be passive because you aren't going to make those people happy. So show me something cool. And it can preview a new mode in Episode 3 or some way that we get to encounter them in Episode 3. Some more secrets would be cool if they obviously I get it's not as simple as just hitting a button and some more hunter missions come into the game. But I was really surprised when at Kinley College there's that whole open area in the middle of the map where you just don't fight anything. You can take cover all over the place. Like, I have a feeling Kinley College was supposed to be a lot more, and that they just weren't able to do what they wanted to with it. So my big thing actually was I really hoped Kinley College was going to beat the 3 different missions, and then you walk out to go to the chapel, and then 3 puffs of smoke happen all around you and you get attacked by hunters because they tracked you down to Kinley College. You wiped out all these stupid outcasts, and now they have you in your sights. So you're the only one, and they can ambush you and take you out. And instead you just walk into there and get the ugliest gun I've seen in the game. So I think that'd be cool. And maybe just some random ones. I still think there's such a missed opportunity. And again, have some faith that there's a long-term plan. But the fact that you can be running around the game, like especially at night, and then your UI starts to bug out and it starts to shake, and if you look around when that happens, there is a hunter watching you. And let that hunter jump down and fight. Let us fight them. Like, that'd be so cool. And you can make it happen fairly rarely. Like, I don't want it to happen every 10 minutes, but like, don't let them just run away. You're obviously stating that they're this omniscient presence where they're watching us, they're following us. Like, we know that they're there. And maybe they don't have to fight us every time. Maybe you have to do something very certain or something in a certain amount of time. I don't know, but man, let us kill some hunters. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. I am curious if you're listening to this on whatever way you can respond, whether it's in my Discord, whether it's on Twitter or YouTube or wherever. How would you like to see hunters implemented? I am curious. Then the final topic, I think it was actually this morning. I'm recording this on Thursday. I saw a post. It got spread around Twitter a little bit, but there was a post on Reddit of this big long list of things that this person believes is wrong with Division 2 or that they would like to see. What was interesting is I saw it get quite a bit of support, and I don't know why. So I'm all about people giving their feedback, talking about what they don't like about the game, explaining what they don't like or what they would like to see. And I saw some people kind of promote this post, and to me it had it probably had 40 different statements on it. And a couple of them were okay, I guess. But most of them were just a personal opinion or a lot of fluff and kind of clickbait, in my opinion. One of them was, the enemies the factions aren't mixed together. So I get what they're referencing is how in the West Side Piers, the factions decided to just work together for some reason. I still think the West Side Pier narrative should just be stricken from the game. That is such a stupid idea. I just don't, because you can tell West Side Pier was supposed to be something different, but that's a rant for a different day. But I don't like that's not feedback. Like, that's just a thing from the first game that you wish was there, even though I would argue it was really stupid and didn't make any sense. Just my opinion. My opinion doesn't matter any more than that person's. I don't know. And then I saw, some people responded to me about it saying that, well, this opinion is important too. When, my opinion is that it's kind of clickbait. And one thing I'll always tell you is that if you feel like you've made like a well thought out or a reasonable point and someone disagrees with you, and this is just my super petty outlook on it. But if you look at the people who like tweets, and you're getting real petty, real juvenile here, but what I've always found is that I always take at least a peek at who likes the things of when people disagree with me, and man, it always tends to be quite the roster of people I don't really give a damn about their opinions. And so unfortunately that sometimes means that stuff actually kind of empowers my opinion, maybe gets my head a little too big. I gotta keep that in check. But I don't know. It's just kind of stuff I've said before. Like, I really think people should throw out their opinions. I think that they should, be very honest and even blunt in a way, but you don't have to be rude, and you don't have to be sensational, and you don't have to be dramatic, and you don't have to be silly about it. Like, even me complaining a lot about how they're handling state of the game. I mean, there was someone tagged, like Chris Gansler and some other people, and told them that they're lucky they were getting 3 weeks off because they're doing such a bad job. They shouldn't have a job to have vacation from. Like, that's so stupid. Like, the thing that's always cracked me up is that I have a very good feeling that half the people who get personal about this stuff are just sitting around their house not doing anything all day. There's no one criticizing them on their job. Maybe, I don't know, that's probably getting petty too, but again, I've said it before, I'll say it again. Just be careful about who you promote and who you support and who you prop up. And that includes me. If I'm saying stupid stuff, if you disagree with everything I'm saying right now, hit me for it. That's fine. Totally cool. I get it. But don't go for sensation. Don't go for lies. Don't go for exaggeration. Don't go for clickbait. There's not much going on right now, and which means that a lot of people have either stopped creating content for Division, or they're basing all of their content on clickbait bullshit. So I get the temptation. I've thought about it, but I'm too lame to do that. So I don't know. Just be careful who you pay attention to. Okay, we're gonna wrap things up with some content updates. I would like to point out a community member's Twitter to give some help to her, Jessica at JESSEVAH on Twitter. She has a pupper who got diagnosed with cancer this week and had surgery, but it was super expensive. And I highly encourage you to go check out her Twitter account. And if you can spare a few bucks for her GoFundMe, please do it. She's been around the channel for over 2 years now. She was one of my first mods. She's been one of the most consistent people in my community. Whenever I've needed to blow some steam off to someone, she's always been very kind and willing to hear me out. She's a good friend, as much as you can have a friend on here, I think. And I really would encourage people to go check her out. I'll try to remember to leave a link to the GoFundMe page in the podcast description or in the comments of the video. So please, even if you can just spare $5-10, I'm sure she'd really appreciate it. And there's a few people I can think of who deserve the help more. So go do that now. I am getting back on some type of streaming schedule. The current plan is Sunday, Wednesday, Saturdays now. Probably mostly mornings on the weekends, obviously afternoons or nights on Wednesday. In the new year, I want to try to do something a little more consistent, a little more often. It's just with the baby and stuff. Like this weekend we have a baptism. Next week is Thanksgiving. Then we should have a little time around Christmas. I'm actually taking some time off, so I plan on streaming quite a bit. Probably some Division, but probably some Call of Duty and other games as well. I really want to play the second and third Tomb Raider. I still need to play Hellblade. Yeah, so we'll be doing some more stuff, and I appreciate people who have stopped by the stream, and I've been getting a bunch of subs and got some bits and people being really kind, and I really appreciate it. So that's what we have this week. If you want to support the podcast or my other content, please check out patreon.com/theechocast. If you are on iTunes, please rate the podcast and leave a review. Or if you're on any other platform that lets you rate and review, I would very much appreciate it. I am Bond Diesel on Twitch, where I stream 3-ish times a week. I'm also Bond Diesel on Twitter at Bond Diesel, where you can catch my thoughts, state of the game live tweets when they happen, and the occasional foot in my own mouth. Last, if you want some cool The EchoCast or Bond Diesel merch, I have a new merch store, bonddiesel.live/merch. The Streamlabs store is actually really cool and has pretty reasonable prices. And that's all I have. So until next time.